This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
And yet another answer in Genesis. This is Wretched Radio. How do we explain the issue of evil, particularly in a pithy way? Not sure you can, frankly. Received an email sent to idea@wretched.org from Step Hen. That's an interesting name, Step Hen.
I think that would be Stephen.
Ah, yes. How best do we respond succinctly when asked the question, why has God allowed this to happen? A pithy reply? Well, you can offer a pithy reply to the question of evil. Typically, people are going to try to use this question to undermine your worldview fallaciously by using the enthymeme logical fallacy. You've heard it before. If God is all-loving, if God is all-powerful, and if evil exists, then he isn't one of the two aforementioned premises. If God is all-loving and all-powerful and evil exists, he either doesn't love us or he can't stop it. Either way, your God doesn't exist. Logical fallacy. If there's a justifiable reason, then the first two premises stand in complete harmony with the third. That God can be all-loving and all-powerful and have a sufficient moral reason for evil that doesn't disqualify him from actually existing. Now, you can try to do it that quickly by explaining God used the greatest evil to bring about the greatest good ever, the life, death, resurrection of his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, so that we can understand how merciful and gracious and kind God is by dying for us while we were yet sinning. God actually used the greatest evil ever, the murder of his Son, to bring about the greatest good, forgiveness of sins for all who would believe. You can do that, and that's pretty pithy. If and you will try a different approach, it might be helpful also. Not to exchange one for the other, but it might be helpful in addition, but it isn't all that pithy. You see, people are asking a big question, and if they're not willing to listen to a bigger response, then they don't want to hear the answer. So that would be my first question. Hey, if God's all loving and all powerful and evil exists, then God doesn't exist. Would you like me to respond to that? Are you interested in actually hearing the explanation? It's going to take a moment. I don't think. Then you're just wasting your breath. And you are, at that point, you're kind of casting pearls before swine. Nevertheless, if they're willing to hear, take them back to the garden where we find the answer. We don't want anybody sitting in judgment of God. Nevertheless, ask the person what they think about the way God how he actually created the planet. Because here's what the Bible says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He put two human beings there as his image bearers, as his representative on the planet, and he gave them one law, and guess what? He gave them free will. Now, here's my question for you, unbeliever. Do you like that? Are you glad that God created the world with human beings who were our federal heads, our representatives who had free will? You like that, right? Because you like free will, and you are tapping into something that seems to have a preeminent importance for the unbeliever and, frankly, far too many Christians. Free will? Got to have free will. I mean, come on. This whole sovereignty thing, what are we, robots or something? We got to have free will. All right, so you like it that God created two people that represented you with free will, right? Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, they exercised that free will. They paid the consequence, and we pay the consequence too, because we joined them in their rebellion, and we would have done no better than Adam and Eve did. So we are living in a world that is cursed by God because we exercised our free will to sin against God. There you have it. Now, here's the option. Imagine God, in an effort to keep evil from happening, created the planet. Guess what? Then we wouldn't have had any free will. You and I would just be a robot. And remember, you didn't want that option, did you? And so that perhaps will help them understand if there's going to be a planet and if there's going to be people who make genuine decisions, God did everything exactly right. We brought this mess upon our own heads. We are the ones who sin. We are the ones responsible for evil, not God. He permits it. He doesn't cause it. He ordains it. He doesn't do it. But you would agree God set up the place exactly right. So your issue is not with God. Your consternation with evil should be toward yourself, because you and I are the ones who participate in the evil. You and I are the ones who do it. Evil doesn't just sit around waiting to be called up and then it comes out and does stuff. We commit evil atrocities. We do evil things. That is the perspective that we need to have. So if you agree that you like the way God set things up, then you can't shake your finger at God and tell him, yeah, you don't exist because you're not all powerful and all loving. There is a third way to respond to the issue of evil. If you'd really like to be pithy, this is an actual biblical response. Who do you think you are? Let me get this straight. You are questioning God. What percentage of all knowledge do you possess, my unbelieving friend? Let's just be generous and say you possess 0.001% of all knowledge of all things in all times, in all places. That's a lot. That's being very generous, 0.01%, because the reality is you and I know a fraction of 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 all the things that there are to be known. Nevertheless, we're going to be generous because we're Christians. You know 0.01% of everything. God knows 100%. And you, with your 0.01%, are questioning the one who knows everything? Who do you think you are? And if you think that sounds terse, I would encourage you to read the last 3 chapters of Job where God does the very same thing. Who do you think you are, Job? Question. Where were you when I created the place? Do you know how to make a sea go to the shore and no further? You know how to do that? You know how to have an animal give birth to a calf? You got that one nailed, Job? I know I do. Did you want to ask me another question? That's God's response to one who questions God and how he does things. Furthermore, you could scoot to, the Christian forbidden chapters, Romans 9, 10, and 11. That's Paul's response. Excuse me, pot? You're questioning the potter? This is preposterous. Who do you think you are? So that would be a third option for you if you want to be really pithy. Send your emails to idea@wretched.org, idea@wretched.org. Todd from Sam in Oklahoma. A huge part of ministry being impacted by the coronavirus that I haven't heard anyone mention, summer kids camps. Yep. The summer camp I work at is having to delay the start of camp for nearly a month. Many churches have had to cancel outright, which means many unchurched kids won't hear the gospel. There's nobody escaping this. Nobody. And if you think that maybe I'll come up with an exit strategy to get away from this, it's not going to happen. You decide, I don't want to participate in a culture that is living this way, that gets shut down because of a virus. I'm not making any commentary on things. I'm just saying you don't like it. So you think, I know, I will buy some land in Montana. Okay, well, that's going to be a problem because the offices aren't open right now to actually carry out that transaction and close the deal and record it with the city and the state. But nevertheless, you decide, I'm going to raise some stallions. Okay, where are you going to get them and how are you going to feed them? Because if there's a virus going on and there's stuff is shut down and you can't purchase it, you can't feed them. And who are you going to sell them to? My point is, everybody is affected by this. When an economy is shut down, and again, this is not a commentary, this is just stating what is obvious, everybody feels it. And statistic after statistic is showing us that people are starting to ask some decent questions. What's going on? Why is this happening? How am I supposed to cope in this? And this is kind of scary. And we have an opportunity to speak into this and say, we can tell you what's going on. We can tell you what God is doing, not in specifics, but in generalities, because he reveals that to us in his word. We've got some answers for you to help you not have terror sweats. We've got some answers for you to the what's going on, what's going to happen when I die questions. Why am I here? We got them. No other worldview coherently does that but Christianity. Nobody's escaping, which means everybody now is a really good witness encounter. This is written to Mr. Friel, sent to idea@wretched.org, in reference to your snark about millennials. I did not snark about millennials.
Recently.
I don't snark about millennials. I like millennials. I like Gen Y and Gen Zers. There is something for us to learn from that generation. I know they're different. Our generation was different than the generation that preceded us. That's just the way it works. The question is, what can we learn from them? I think a lot. I have learned a lot. We got a ton of them here at Wretched. You watch them and study them. They're an interesting group, and they could teach us some stuff. At any rate, that aside, Mr. Friel, you snarked about our failure to know and read analog clocks. Like it wasn't exactly snarky, it was just an observation. Millennials do, in fact, know what an analog clock is and how to read them. I believe you're trying to explain it to Gen Z. Well, that might be.
Here, take a quarter and call someone who cares. Ooh, that was both mean and outdated.
Nice work, Karen. Let's learn from this generation. If we have eyes to see and ears to hear, I do believe there are things we can learn from millennials and Gen Y and Gen Z, even if they can't read an analog clock. This is Wretched Radio.
Pepperoni pizza for Pete, which in an odd way is a lot like the difference between imputation and expiation. Are you familiar with the difference, Pete?
I didn't order a pizza?
But it actually in Latin means completely, to completely atone. It's a Latin word, expiationem, and yet an action noun because it comes from the past participle stem of